Hello.
Hello, Ginger. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So, how's Idaho?
Well, I'm smoking salmon. It's legal here. No, I'm kidding.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. The Hey Chaplain podcast brings you stories and wisdom about life in law enforcement, giving support and encouragement to those who wear the badge. This episode marks the beginning of our second year, and I wanted to go back and do some follow-up with some of our past guests. A few of my guests were close friends that I already knew for years or acquaintances from my past, but most of them were new to me, connected either through my work as a volunteer chaplain here in Kansas City or through my network of chaplaincy and podcasting friends online. But each of these people have become friends, so I wanted to do follow-up interviews to give them a chance to share more of their wisdom with you. I want to share an email from the musician who does the music for my show, and I want to touch base with a few friends to talk about promotions and hiring and when to leave law enforcement and all kinds of topics related to that. Sorry, there won't be any bagpipe music, but there will be a bagpipe conversation, and you don't want to miss the conversation I have with Ginger Passarelli of the Soup Ladies. Most of the music I use in this podcast, certainly all of the guitar and mandolin music, is from one artist, Chris Haugen. Chris emailed me here just a little while back and wrote, "It is wonderful and rewarding to hear that the music I create is having a positive influence and helping people along the way in whatever form. I make mission statements to guide my music every once in a while, and the most recent one was simply, to heal." While I do find a lot of Chris's music to be calm and healing, I can't thank him enough for his contributions to the tone and feel of this podcast. I want to extend a heartfelt congratulations to the officers who were guests on my podcast who got promoted last year. My good friend Jim Sutterby from episodes 3 and 7 got promoted to Major. We still play basketball together every week. Jonathan Westbrook from episode 11 is now a sergeant working in patrol. And Greg Dorsett from episode 4 was promoted from sergeant to captain. He dropped by my office to talk about the ins and outs of getting promoted. Hello, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. How about you, Jared?
Doing pretty well. So you were a sergeant for a long time, and now you're a captain.
I am. It was a long time. A little over 14 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So why take a promotion? Because you could have stayed as sergeant.
I could have. I was really tempted to. We're seniority based, and you kind of climb up that ladder where you can work wherever you want to, when you want to, and have it. But I don't know, just a change in leadership within the department just kind of really instilled some confidence in where we were going. And I don't know, I just prayed about it and just kind of really got the answer. It's like, no, this is where you need to go. This is the change that you've wanted to make some changes. So here's your opportunity. Go do it.
Not just a change for you, but also an opportunity to affect some change.
Very much so. And that's really been emphasized with our new chief and the people that he's put in place. And it's very much, if you have a problem and you bring a solution, it's very much an emphasis to say, yes, let's do this.
Right.
And so that's really welcoming when guys bring you things and they're frustrated about, and you can just go do stuff. You can just make it happen.
Now you're in a position where you can affect some change. You can improve some things that have needed improving, or, represent people better also. And
And just getting to see kind of the inner workings of how things work. When you're on the labor side of things, you just kind of do the labor. You come in, you do your shift, you do your thing. As long as you take care of everything that you're supposed to, okay, that's a good day. But then we get to see the backside of it, how things happen and why we end up doing what we do.
Yeah.
It gives you a really good perspective where you can then again take it back to your sergeants and your patrolmen. It's like, this is why we are changing this.
Right. And in your department, captain is still, I don't know, I don't mean this to sound bad, but it's middle management.
Exactly.
It's not executive leadership,
No.
But it's not down at the bottom end of the ladder either.
Right.
And so you are kind of a go-between between the executive leadership and the sergeants and patrol officers.
Very much so. And when that balance is there, between the executive side and, say, operations or whatever unit it is, the captain spot's a great spot to be in because you can take things that your guys want and need and take them up and say, hey, this is why they need this. And if the balance is right on the top, they say, make it happen. They don't want excess work. So you bring them a work product and say, hey, this is how we can fix this.
Right.
And they sign off. And that's the way it should work. There's been a huge awakening to taking care of people and officer wellness. And you've probably seen some of the development just in, we added a wellness officer. Yeah. But some of the programs that we're implementing, and a lot of that has fallen to the captains, middle management, sergeants to kind of really dive into because we have that connection with the patrolmen. Yeah. And that's been awesome to watch expand. Yeah. Just seeing people investing back in people and letting them say, hey, it's okay to not be okay, but we'll get through this together.
Yeah, that's good.
And hearing guys is kind of checking on each other a lot better than we used to. Or guys is picking up the phone and saying, you know what, I'm having a bad day. Yeah. And just talking about it. I don't need anything from you. Just need somebody to listen.
That's something that's been absent from a lot of law enforcement culture in most places.
Yep. Yeah. It's always been the stiff upper lip. Yeah. Hey, we're moving on. Well, maybe somebody's not ready to. Yeah. They need a minute to kind of sort that out and put it away and
telling
put it away
somebody
the right
to man
way.
Up and get over it is not really always the best solution.
No. No.
What part of you did not want to promote? What was it that would have held you back or was arguing against promoting up to captain?
That's kind of hard to answer. I guess the status quo. You know what you know. You feel comfortable there and in a bad way, complacent. And yet, ever since I took the promotion, I've seen how much it opens other doors and has really gotten me to a point to encourage other guys to take it that I know they have a good experience basis as a sergeant, and they're known as being strong sergeants. Like, take the next step. Yeah. We need you to fill holes. Yeah. Not just to be a good captain, but to train good sergeants below you. Yeah. And send that back down.
And that's very much what you're doing now.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm pretty blessed to have the sergeants that I do. They make my job pretty easy, but it's fun sharing that knowledge and experience.
What is the worst part of reaching this level of supervision and leadership? What's the worst part of being a captain?
Boy, that's tough. I guess maybe not getting to pick where you work or when you work. We're no longer in the union, so we get placed. Fortunately, we have a chief that will put people where he believes they best fit. He wants to know what your strengths are and what your interests are and what you've succeeded at and how you can benefit the department. So he's going to put you where he needs you, which it should be. I mean, I can't really think of a negative, really. Really can. I've enjoyed it. It's been a good move.
Thanks, Greg. I hope everyone is able to navigate through their law enforcement career and find satisfaction at each level. Sometimes that's kind of difficult, but usually we can find ways to invest in others and find the silver lining. I hear people ask, who would want to be a police officer these days? Well, I'm happy to report that there are still lots of young people who want to serve. Here in Kansas City, we've had a couple classes of recruits go through the academy just this year, and I've had the honor of instructing them for a day, getting to meet them and introducing them to officer wellness and the role of a chaplain. One of the interviews where we specifically talked about hiring was episode 21 in regard to dispatch. So I drove down to the communications center and checked in with Manny De Leon to see how he's doing recruiting call takers and dispatchers. I didn't have my usual recording equipment, but Manny was gracious enough to step away from his busy work and give me a quick update.
All right, Manny, how are you doing today?
Doing good.
Good. It's been a little while since I've seen you, a couple months. Tell me how it's going as far as recruiting and retaining people at communications.
Not much has changed since the last time we talked. Given the job market, we're still struggling to recruit individuals. We did have a couple leave because of the residency requirement.
Really?
Yeah, so that's unfortunate. They were good employees, and it's just a struggle to retain them because of that. Aside from that, we are trying, we've gone to a career fair out in Fort Hays. That wasn't really successful. We only had like 3 people stop by at our booth. The most successful one was the recent one here at the Kansas City, Kansas Community College Tech Center. We did have about 8 or 9 people that approached our booth, and they seemed very interested. And I think it was just more of they know our department and they're local, and so we're still struggling. Our numbers are still very low. I think we're at about 19 or so out of 40, so we still...
Yeah. You're running at 50%.
Right, pretty much. So there's a lot of overtime for our dispatchers, and...
That's a mixed blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's either it's good for those that want the money, but then it's not good for those that, have kids and want an outside life and value that more. So,
how are you doing personally?
I'm doing good. The vacations help, so it's nice to escape and disconnect.
Right.
I like taking cruises just for that reason.
Oh, really?
So,
Really?
I have one coming up in May, going to, I think it stops in Cozumel and Costa Maya with my parents.
Oh, fantastic.
So they haven't been on a cruise before. My mom has been hesitant because it's the ocean.
Right.
But no, I think she opened up to the idea. So it really helps to disconnect and
recharge,
leave work aside, for a bit, and not having to carry my work phone with me and getting bothered day or night. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manny, for the work that you do. Let's pray that we can find the right people to come in and serve that critical role of dispatcher. Let me say thank you to my listeners from around the world. Of course, the United States makes up the majority of my listeners, but I also have a lot from Canada, South Africa, Australia and Mexico, Germany and United Kingdom, and New Zealand, as well as another 30 countries or so. The top cities outside of the Kansas City metro area would be Riverside, California, Miami, Florida, Houston, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Joplin, Missouri, Tucson, Arizona, North Platte, Nebraska, Taylors, South Carolina, Toledo, Ohio, and St. Louis, Missouri. Thank you so much for listening to this show, and thank you for telling other people about it. It's your word-of-mouth advertising that's created such a great community around this podcast. I have a lot of listeners in Canada, and many of them seemed to come on board when we had the episode about bagpiping. I later learned that there's a connection between bagpiping and curling and maybe a few other events in Canada. And so I asked Detective R.J. Ashley to come back and give me an update on the pipe band. Hi, R.J. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Excellent. Tell me, how has the pipe band been doing the last several months?
Well, we've been very busy. We've done a couple line of duty deaths before the first of the year. After the first of the year, we participated in the annual Kansas City St. Patty's Day Parade, and that's been the first time we've had the parade since COVID started.
Oh, yeah.
So it went pretty well. I don't know how we ended up placing first place, but we did.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. So just the KCK pipe band, or were you combined with other?
So we were combined with some of the firemen from the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department, and then some other pipers, and then a couple other kids. So it was a real good time. Perfect weather for it.
That's fantastic. Have a good group like that. And you've got some new pipers since we last talked.
We do. We've added 2 additional pipers and 1 additional drummer. So hopefully, a year and a half or so, maybe they'll be up on pipes, hopefully.
Right.
Or they could surprise me and get on sooner.
That's fantastic. So I heard that a couple of your new guys actually went out on their own for an event.
They did. We had a funeral down south around the Springfield area. One of the firemen that pipes in that area reached out and asked if we could help out with the funeral. So our 2 newest pipers were the only 2 that were available, and they went down there and did a good job from what I hear.
So scary.
I'm sure.
But performing, but they had an experienced person waiting for them when they got there, right?
They did. I think there was 2 pipers, so 4 total with them going down there.
Excellent. Okay. All right. That'd still be pretty intimidating, but I'm glad they did it.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So now you actually partner up and collaborate with some other pipe bands from other departments. I mean, that's not uncommon for you to go to a place and there's other departments that have pipers and drummers that you're going to work with. What kind of departments have you been working with some this last year? I mean, are there ones that you see again and again?
I'd say the one that we play with on a regular basis is Topeka. They have their own pipe band and drum corps. So we'll play with them at some of the line of duty death funerals. We're actually going to play this coming Friday down at Topeka for the state memorial. And then Chaplain, at the Chaplain funerals, there was another fireman from around the Springfield area that we also played with at that time.
What are the numbers we're looking at?
It varies, honestly, depending on the area and who's available. I mean, we might play with, a group from St. Louis area. Like every time that we go to these funerals, we just don't know who all is going to be playing.
Right.
But somehow we end up getting it together and, try to do a good job.
You have to have a meeting beforehand, figure out, does everybody have the same songs in the repertoire?
Yeah, sometimes that's a train wreck too, because you have maybe an hour to 2 hours beforehand and figure out who can play this or who can play that, or, just it has to come together and has to look appropriate.
Sure. You're probably dealing with all different levels of skill.
True.
From people who are just masters and others who are complete novices. Not everybody necessarily knows the same songs, although typically you're going to have a short list of common songs, right?
Yeah, we'll play the common tunes, Going Home or Amazing Grace, Wings, and then Rowan Tree. But I'd say for the most part, a majority of the other groups have been playing for several years. I feel like we're one of the few that is kind of at the rebuilding stage.
Okay. So for the future, in that rebuilding, you've got 2 new pipers coming in. There might be more in the future. How big would you like to see it? Let's project out like 3 to 5 years. How many pipers, how many drummers would you like to see KCK have?
Well, we always say the more the merrier. I think it'd be nice to have about 12 pipers and 4 snares, 1 bass, and maybe a couple other, I think tenors, what we call them.
Okay, sure.
Realistically, it'd be nice to have 6 pipers, 2 snare drummers, and then 1 bass.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
For the size of our agency and the events that we play, I think that would be appropriate.
Sure. That also gives you some flexibility if there's people that aren't available. You wouldn't have to have every single hand on deck every time.
That's always a plus, especially when we start running into the, springtime, summertime. People are on vacations or have other events that they need to go to.
Right. And you guys do funerals, you do graduations, all kinds of different events that are routine and some that are special. And so, yeah.
And then we get the pop-up events that we know about, within like 2 weeks, and we have to plan. But it's fine. What
upcoming events do you have?
Well, we have one scheduled for tonight. Hopefully the weather cooperates, but it's going to be an open house over at our South Patrol. And then Friday, I think I had mentioned it before, but we're going to Topeka to play for the annual State Police Memorial. And then the following week, we have a PD graduation. That'll be at Memorial Hall. And then we have our own police department, police memorial on Wednesday. And then on the 21st, we'll be playing at the Casey Monarchs for, I think it's their Irish Day.
Oh, fantastic.
So we've been learning the tune of Star Spangled Banner, and we're trying to get up to speed on that so we don't, obviously look ridiculous out there. But
I'm sure you guys do great. That's the local baseball team here.
It is.
Kansas City Monarchs. That's awesome.
So that should be a good time. Our drummers weren't able to attend, so it'll be just us 4 playing pipes. We'll play it at the opening and then be able to sit down in the stands afterwards and watch the baseball game. So should be a good time.
That's great. This last year, we talked to several former police officers who are now solidly in their post-law enforcement career. Some are running businesses or working in other fields, and some are running nonprofits that help cops. But how do you know when to leave law enforcement and start your next chapter? Sergeant Dustin Darenfeld from Episode 9 left the police department this year to pursue a career with the airlines. Let's check in with him and see what he says. All right, Dustin. So you were a sergeant for the police department. Now you work for the airlines. Well, tell me about that. What happened?
Right. So, it was an experience that I had always wanted to kind of grab onto. I've always been interested in aviation. I've been interested in flying and experiencing other cultures. And this sort of a career field allows me to do exactly that. And I could be starting at my base one day, and then on that very same day, I could be in a different part of the world or two different parts of the world.
Sure.
So that's what happened.
So you're working for the airline, and what's your goal long term with that?
Right. So long term, I'm in in-flight services currently, and then my long-term goal is to apply for and get accepted into the pilot program.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I could, once I do my hours of flight time, then I come over, and it's kind of like the police department and seniority, and you get based with a specific aircraft.
Okay.
So you would be flying at maybe a 737 or a 777 or whatever that may be.
Right. Okay. So a lot of cops are thinking about their next chapter and it's sometimes a completely new, career field. How do you decide now is the time to go?
It really is difficult, and it's very personal to every individual officer. I just kind of had come to the point where I had to make that decision. And you kind of also come to a point where you appreciate all the opportunity. However, there's also part of you with every call for service, you see death, destruction, and despair on a consistent basis, and that's tough. And you see, is it something that I am going to be healthy, well, and wise with long term, and continuing in that? And then you have to make that decision. And I have some other experiences. I have education behind me too. So I wanted to take this opportunity. And law enforcement or criminal justice is always something that I can come back to with my education and experience.
Thanks, Dustin. I like what Dustin said about making a decision where you can be healthy, well, and wise. Sometimes that means staying in law enforcement, but making small changes to your hours or days off or the specific type of job that you're doing in the department. But other times, that means moving on and doing something else entirely. Hear me now. We need more cops, and manpower shortages are at critical levels. But we don't need you to sacrifice your well-being on the altar of law enforcement. Try making a small change. Maybe consider a big change, or even just a break. But please be healthy, well, and wise. Through this podcast, I've learned a lot, but one of the greatest benefits has been meeting some of the incredible personalities. I knew that Soup Ladies had been really busy the last several months, and so one of the goals of this episode was to check in on Ginger Passarelli. What has Soup Ladies been doing the last, 8 or 9 months since we talked last?
Okay, are we recording now?
Yeah. Oh, we've been recording the whole time. I'm just going to cut most of it out.
Okay. Glad I didn't say a potty word.
No, that's specifically Mama Passarelli. We got to cut out. We got to censor it for foul language, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you're around cops, and every once in a while there's an appropriate place to throw in a certain word. And sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, you got to watch. Can't go straight from the police station to the Bible study. You've got to take a moment and check yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. What have Soup Ladies been up to? We are still doing what we do with police and fire, and being called out on, certain large structure fires. We don't go to house fires generally, but there's, structure fires. There have been a lot of search and rescues that we get called out to.
What about in the natural disaster realm? Have you had very many, I guess I'm thinking forest fires, but like tornadoes and floods and stuff. Have you been called out to a lot of that lately?
We went to Mayfield, Kentucky after a tornado there. Okay. And it was the first time that we have a new Soup Lady that she's retired homicide major crimes detective. And this was her first trip. Now she's seen the worst of the worst of the worst for years and years, but going to a disaster and seeing where everything is uprooted and laid out flat. Yeah. It's very different than being at a homicide. It's very different being at a place where houses are leveled and there's no trees, there's no nothing.
Yeah, I was there in Kentucky when that happened, just right after it happened. And I think I missed you by just, 30 or 40 miles and maybe a day or two. But yeah, I was on the ground, saw some of that. That was tremendous destruction. So
it was. And I've been to Chaplain and a few other places where there have been tornadoes. And tornadoes are very different than hurricanes because they're they have a path.
Yeah.
And hurricanes, they just go miles and miles wide because hurricanes are big. But it's a very different kind of destruction. And, some places get flooded in a storm surge. But when a tornado comes through, if you were hit, your house is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially, it's sticks and bricks now. So
yeah, that's amazing. But to hear about the work you're doing, I think is really warms the hearts of a lot of people listening all across the country. And so
one of the things that I really want to stress on this is that our soup ladies are available for people who have major incidents. We're not talking about every broken fingernail, but we're talking major incidents that we are available. And if they want to do something to serve their people, that if we can't come, we can advise. And
right.
I'll tell you, I've done a lot of that because obviously we can't be everywhere.
Right.
But
it is a ministry that can be replicated, at least to some degree.
Absolutely.
So
we have a template and it works.
I heard that you moved to Idaho.
Yes, my husband and I moved to Idaho, and we are expanding Soup Ladies into Idaho now.
That's fantastic.
Spending time getting to know the local law enforcement, and just met some of the firefighters here in the local area. Still back and forth between Boise and Seattle. I'm probably over in Washington once or twice a month to help out with, large scale things that are going on.
Still lots of Soup Lady work being done in Washington State.
A lot of Soup Lady work being done in Washington. And, as long as there's a need, we'll keep doing it.
Sure. Most of the people I know that have gone to Idaho are like, don't tell anybody about Idaho. We don't want everyone else moving here.
Well, now that we're here, now we don't want them. But
right.
Idaho has turned out to be a peaceful place to be. There's not as much people being riled up like they are in Washington.
Sure.
And, just on another note, and a project that we're working on right now, I contacted our U.S. senators and congressmen and women from Washington when I was there to get information about this project that I'm working on. And I got nothing from any of them, not even a return email or a return phone call, nothing.
Wow.
And I Googled, I'm all over the computer. And so I Googled who's our U.S. senator from where I live. And
now in Idaho, right.
In Idaho. And I contacted his office and told the ladies what my project was. And they said, okay, great. And within 2 weeks, I had all of the information I needed to work on this project with the feds.
That's awesome.
How to serve them, how to, what the perimeters are, what we can and can't do. It was amazing. And so we're moving forward on that project, and I'll be able to tell you more about it once we get going on it.
Okay, so it's all top secret right now.
It's pretty darn exciting. What we're doing is pretty exciting.
Well, I can't wait. I hope maybe in a year's time we can circle back around on this, and you can tell me all about the new projects that
will be
Soup
perfect.
Ladies have been doing. That's amazing. Fantastic.
Yep.
Any other Idaho news?
Okay, so once we got over here to Idaho, I went to the sheriff's office locally here for this county and introduced myself and told them about Soup Ladies and what we do. And there was some people who did know about us, but was kind of a surprise when I pulled up in the pink truck. And so I talked to the operations chief and said, there's something that I do that I don't want to stop doing because I've moved here. And that is be a law enforcement chaplain.
Oh,
yeah. And he goes, you're a trained law enforcement chaplain? And I said, yeah.
Trained and certified. That's right.
Yeah. And he goes, oh my gosh, we haven't had a chaplain for a long time.
Oh,
and
really?
So like the next week they had me in there and fingerprinting me and filling out paperwork so they could background me. And somebody came to the house and interviewed me. And
that's awesome.
So now I'm a chaplain here, I've been riding along. This is a big county here, and
Sure.
it's been great getting to know these folks and, taking lunch over to the department and feeding everybody and getting to know them. And
Oh, that's awesome.
it's been
That's
awesome.
That's great. That's fantastic. Well,
Yep.
I'm so happy for you, and keep doing the good work that you're doing.
Thanks.
All right. God bless
thanks
you.
for calling and keeping up with me. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Ginger's love for first responders is wonderfully contagious. But if you've been bitten by fatigue and cynicism, I hope that you catch her untiring commitment to love cops. I know that I don't ever want to stop doing what I'm doing. Speaking of the future, in the second year of the podcast, I've got all kinds of great things planned for you. There'll be interviews with lots of cops, including more first-hand accounts on all kinds of topics. We'll start the year with a detective from Scotland Yard, and we'll also talk to officers about a wide variety of law enforcement jobs, and we'll discuss the issues, both professional and personal, that occupy our minds. Then we'll also get the insights of people who are law enforcement adjacent, like the forensic nurses at a hospital who work with assault victims. And of course, we'll also talk to a few more chaplains here and there as they strive to help the wellness of cops everywhere. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
The two most common types of murder that I dealt with would be gang related.
Okay.
Because we have to have a problem with gangs in London, or mental health. Mental health is something that we dealt with an awful lot, and I don't know why. I suspect a lot of it. And before I was talking about budget cuts, it's not just the police that suffer from budget cuts. A lot of the health services have as well.
Sure.
And those were the two most common ones. And the mental health ones I always found quite sad, because what it tended to be quite often would be someone close to the killer would be the victim. And so many times it would be the same story. So, for instance, it would be a son who's suffering from really poor mental health, and his mum would be asking for help. And it would be the mum that would end up being the person being killed. That happened so many times. I found that really quite sad.
If you listen to this podcast through a special podcast app, then I'd love to have you subscribe or follow Hey Chaplain. This won't cost you anything, but what that does is it allows you to never miss an episode. Every time I publish a new episode, even a bonus episode, you'll have it downloaded automatically to your device. The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you liked what you heard here, please share this episode with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening today, and as always, pray for peace in our city.